Okay, this is just a follow-up video to my last video, I guess. I talked about how YouTube put a copyright strike on one of my old videos, actually 515 days old video. It was just like within an hour after I had put up my video about the death of Prince. So I know that the video is also connected to Prince just because I had put this Prince video out. And YouTube has done this to me before. They like copyright strike my old videos, and they do it at certain dates that sync up with other stuff. That's what I kind of mentioned in this video, but I found some other things that I'm going to talk about. But even before I go to that, I just want to tell everybody thanks for the comments and whatnot. I know I haven't responded as much as I should. I try to. I literally, though I have to go to my job, I'm also in a band and I also DJ. I don't have that much time. My girlfriend works at night. I get home about 7 o'clock after work. I have to pick our daughter up, make sure she does her homework, make supper. I don't get to sit down until like 10 o'clock at least. And I usually stay up until like 4 or 5 in the morning, and I got to get up at 8 in the morning. You know what I mean? So a lot of times I have an idea or some other stuff, and I just do not have time to go through and respond to everybody's message. But I always feel really bad about it because I appreciate them. There's a lot of great info, and people are giving me a lot of good info and helping me. But I also know how, if people don't respond to your messages, sometimes people take offense to it or this or that, Some of the messages I even responded to, but for some reason the responses aren't going through. I had this problem a while back where it wouldn't let me respond to certain people or on certain videos. I don't know what the problem is, And sometimes I just don't know what to write back, so I just don't write back. So don't take any offense to it. I try to respond to people and whatnot. Sometimes I get so far behind, then I get lost and I just say, screw it, what's the point, And I also don't want to lose my train of thought on some of the things I thought about at work or this or that, So, that being said, let's move on here. I'll put a link to this video in the description as well so you can check it out. So you know what I'm talking about. It's only 15 minutes. It's actually one of my shorter videos lately. So to sum up this video, just quickly I guess, the main point was that I had put this video out about Prince, then YouTube magically copyright strikes my video about 22 Jump Street that I had put out in 2014. But what's interesting, this movie came out June 13th, 2014. I put my video up on November 25th, 2014, which is a span of 165 days. If you write out the word 22 in Gematria, 22 also equals 165, like 22 Jump Street. Also, June 13th, the day that this movie came out, June 13th this year, just so happens to be the 165th day of the year because it's a leap year. So, I'm also going to read some of this new stuff here then. So, if you write out 165, it equals 112. Prince died on the 112th day of the year. That was also Queen Elizabeth's 90th birthday. There's other 112s that I'll mention here that it goes with everything that I have recently been talking about. Chicago Bulls equals 112. Wardell Stephen Curry II equals 112. But anyway, the 112th prime is even 613, a lot like June 13th. Also, yesterday when I had put this post up, I noticed that the date that they copyright struck the video was 4/23. It just so happens to be 165 days after my birthday. I turned 33 years old on November 10th, 2015. That day in itself has a lot of interesting things. I made a post about it because the date numerology is 56. And I also, 5 months and 6 days after my birthday, I swear I had food poisoning and I was like really sick. I don't know what the deal was, but it was 5 months and 6 days after my birthday on April 16th, which also has a date numerology of 56. So, who really knows? All I know is that I was sick. I believed it to be food poisoning. I might have just got sick for whatever the reason. These numbers, for whatever it is, there's some type of, it follows you. I don't know how to describe it any better than that. There's some type of matrix magic going on, along with the Masons and whatever else, who I believe just know how to manipulate these. So anyway, my birthday also just so happens to leave 51 days in the year. Every year it leaves 51 days in the year. I've mentioned 51 a whole lot. Pope Francis turned 15 in the year 51. Donald Trump is 15 years, 51 days older than Barack Obama. All the stuff with the Cleveland Cavaliers. Queen Victoria, the previous longest reigning British English monarch of all time, who was surpassed by Queen Elizabeth. She died 51 years, 15 days before Queen Elizabeth, which is interesting because Prince dying on the same day as Queen Elizabeth's birthday. There's a whole lot of 51 I've talked about. Even if you go from the day they put a copyright strike on my video to the 165th day this year, it's a span of 51 days. The copyright strike also came 515 days after I put the video up. The 51 and the 15 once again. Also, since it's 22 Jump Street, I went 22 days before and after the day they put a copyright strike on my video. 22 days before just so happens to be April Fool's Day. That adds up to 51. 515 is 22 days after it. If you go from the 165th day and you subtract 22 days, it takes you to 522, a day that I have mentioned multiple times, especially in the month of January. There's lots of 143 going on. David Blatt, the Cavs coach, was born on this day. He got fired on January 22nd, the same day that Steve Kerr came back. There's a whole lot of 143. I talked about it in regards to destruction, like tornadoes and earthquakes and all of that. So, a whole lot more. I just don't want to keep mentioning it. Also, if you go from June 13th and you add 22 days, it takes you to 7-5. A lot like, they can also be written as 5-7. Prince died at the age of 57. There's something to do with Princess Charlotte as well. In the movie National Treasure, they say the secret lies with Charlotte. The secret lies with Charlotte is 121 in Gematria. A lot like Warriors, a lot like Revelation. Also, the reason I mentioned that was because Princess Charlotte was baptized on July 5th last year, 7-5 or 5-7. And one of the people who leaves me comments or whatever, it was one of the ones that wouldn't go through for whatever the reason. I thought I had messaged him back, but Maestro, but he was telling me about how it's a tribute to Prince George, the Prince Death or whatever. George equals 57 in Gematria. Also in Jewish Gematria, George equals 154, and we just got the story that Prince was awake for 154 hours before he died. But what also sticks out in regards to Charlotte is that King George III was the guy, he was the king during the American Revolutionary War and whatnot, and he was married to Charlotte, Queen Charlotte. So, and then we have a Princess Charlotte and a Prince George. They are the great grandkids of Queen Elizabeth. Also on this movie, Nicolas Cage's character, the family was entrusted with a secret from Charles Carroll, who is a real guy, and literally he was the last living person that signed the Declaration of Independence, so he was the last one to die. He died 56 years after the Declaration of Independence was signed by 56 signers. Remember, the first one to sign it was John Hancock, who even died at the age of 56. Also want to point out, Queen Elizabeth became queen when her dad died at the age of 56. If you write out 165, like the 165 that I mentioned with all these other stuff, 165 even equals 56, the small way in Gematria. It also equals 128, the big way, just like William Penn, the guy who founded Philadelphia and also Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania became a state on a date numerology of 128. His name was even Charles Carroll III, right? And all this Charles stuff I'm talking about is if Queen Elizabeth dies, Prince Charles, her son, will become the new king, and he would be King Charles III. So interesting, this guy is Charles Carroll III. He even died exactly 116 years before Prince Charles that I'm talking about was born. And he was also born on September 19th, 919. I have mentioned this number a whole lot as well. It's really interesting this year because Pope Francis, he began his trip to the United States by going to Cuba on 9/19, or that's how his trip began or whatever. Then Obama was the first president in 88 years to go to Cuba. Whole bunch more stuff to that, but it just sticks out because, Pope Francis went there. It's all about Cuba. Also, the other date that YouTube always codes my videos with when they copyright strike them, it always is this. I've talked about it multiple times. All the other times that they have showed me a date or whatever, it had something to do with this date right here, September 19th. I even mentioned how the 20th president, James Garfield, whose name adds up to 56, he was shot at a train station, died 79 days later on September 19th, 1881. And interesting, it was 79 days later because the 22nd prime is 79. 22 Jump Street and whatnot. November 14th in Gematria equals 91. September 19th in Gematria equals 91. So this guy was born on a date with 91 in Gematria, also dies on a day with 91 in Gematria. A number I've talked about that was connected to almost every president that was assassinated. We even had Will Smith, the football player of the Saints, who died this year. He wore number 91. I've talked about 91 never being good. I still have yet to see it be a positive number for anything. And they want you to think of Will Smith, the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air and whatnot. Just think about it. The Fresh Prince, like he would be the new king or something. Prince Charles, also, Prince George would be like higher up, a Fresh Prince. Tons of other stuff with it, but you get the point. 9/19, also the 262nd day. Obama went to Cuba 26 weeks and 2 days later. This guy also, he signed his name on the Declaration of Independence, Charles Carroll of Carrollton, which equals 961 in Jewish Gematria. I just found it interesting because I noticed the first word on gematrix.org that popped up that showed me this, it was the same word or the same number, was elevator, which just sticks out because Prince died on an elevator. Also, in regards to this guy and the secret lying with Charlotte, Charlotte is the feminine name for Charles. She will be 1 year, 1 month, and 11 days on the 165th day of the year this year. Her real name is Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, that equals 219, a number I've also mentioned a whole lot. I'm not sure what the complete meaning is. I've thought about the Golden State Warriors winning a ton of times. I've talked about it with them. Back-to-back champions equals 219 championships. It's also special to Pope Francis. The Philadelphia train wreck last year was 219 days before Pope Francis's 79th birthday. If you go from that day to 8/7, it's a span of 87 days. 8/7 is normally the 219th day of the year. This year it's the 220th day. But also, if you go from 8/7 to the day Pope Francis became the Pope, it's a span of 219 days. So a lot of mirrored stuff from the Philadelphia train wreck in connection to, so just special to Pope Francis, these 87 and 219, special to Pope Francis. Also, it may be years, but it seems as though they're trying to set up Princess Charlotte to be the queen. It just seems like they love long reigning women. I don't know. It's just a thought, They had Victoria, then Elizabeth, and when Charlotte was born, it was a pretty big deal. But maybe that's all just to do with Prince George or something, since he was married to Charlotte. Like I said, just a thought. And I know I mentioned these 51s. I'm just going to read them off again. Trump is 15 years, 51 days older than Obama. Queen Victoria died 51 years, 15 days before Elizabeth II became the queen. Pope Francis turned 15 in the year 51. Cleveland equals 51. LeBron James equals 51. Cleveland Cavs equals 51. They play in Quicken Loans Arena. Quicken Loans equals 51. Cleveland hasn't won a sports championship in 51 years. There's a super Philadelphia connection. Ever since Pope Francis went to Philadelphia, that was the last place that he went on his trip to the United States. Philadelphia equals 101 and 65. 1965 was 51 years ago. 1915, 101 years ago. So this number, 51 and 15, also connected to Philadelphia. And like I said, there is some, I don't know what it is, magic or how it's done or what. But I realized that when I was at work the other day, I realized that not only is my birthday to the day they put a copyright strike on my video 165 days, it's also 5 months and 13 days. And I've talked about this in regards to the movie Money Monster that comes out. It comes out on the 134th day of the year, which is May 13th, 5/13. King Charles III in Gematria equals 134. Lots of other stuff with it, but just wanted to mention how I just thought of this at work, and right as I thought of it, the next document that I was typing in, it was a check for $513. You cannot make that up. I don't know how that is even possible. I was like sitting there thinking about it, writing on my paper. I looked up and the check was $513, and I was typing in checks. My job is data entry, the easiest job in the entire world. I get to sit there and think all day long. So just to explain it, it wasn't anything else. There was nothing else on there. It was just a check that pops up. And the check, $513. The very next check was $216, which just sticks out because my birthday to the 165th day of the year, 216 days. So, interesting number. Maybe that explains why I'm getting shown this. Who knows? 423 also just so happens to be the 114th day of the year. This is the day they copyright struck my video. And I've also been mentioning the significance of 146, how it's connected to June 14th, which is 14/6, which also normally in a non-leap year is the 165th day of the year. Pope Francis this year on that day, it will be his 1189th day as Pope, matching the chapters in the King James Bible. Also, it's Donald Trump's 70th birthday, and I've also mentioned it in regards to Philadelphia a ton of times. Zachary K. Hubbard was even talking about 5/23 being a significant date, ripe for an assassination because it's the 144th day of the year this year. But what stands out to me, I guess, about YouTube doing this to me on the 114th day of the year, I talked about this a long time ago, but if you write out the day before in Gematria, it equals 114. And I talked about it in regards to using the end date and whatnot on the calculations of the calculator. It was even clear back in regards to Queen Elizabeth, something to do with August 9th and how she was 89 years old. Can't remember it all, but interesting, they copyright strike my video on the 114th day of the year. The day before equals 114. I've mentioned a lot about this day right here. Even Antonin equals 522, and he died after going quail hunting, a lot like when Dick Cheney shot his friend or whatever, and it was 522 weeks before Antonin Scalia died. Stephen equals 522. Steph Curry just got hurt. Also, I talked about David Blatt coming back, or David Blatt getting fired the same day Steve Kerr came back. David Michael Blatt equals 143 in Gematria, and his birthday is 522. It was also 122 days before his birthday, and he got fired on 122. There's more to this, but just pointing out that I have talked about this 522 a significant amount, and it would be the day before the 144th day of the year. Also, this year, June 13th is the day before the day that I've been talking about a whole lot. So it makes me wonder if the day before is definitely a day to look out for. 522 and also 613 seem to be significant days. So I ended this post here with, I just went through my little notepad here, and I just typed in 165 to see if I had, put some down that I had no idea what they meant at the time. And I had a whole lot of pretty interesting ones. Camilla Rosemary, which is Prince Charles' wife, her name equals 165. She was also born on 7/17, which is the day before the Republican National Convention that begins in Quicken Loans Arena in Cleveland, where the Cavaliers play. If you write out Donald Trump assassinated at National Convention in Gematria, it equals 165. She'll also be 69 years old on her birthday this year. Cleveland Cavaliers equals 69. Back-to-back equals 69. Belgium equals 69. There's been a lot of bad 69s this year. David Bowie dying at the age of 69. Also, look at that. If Queen Elizabeth dies and Prince Charles becomes the king, Camilla will become the queen. Queen Camilla, 404. Prince Charles, 404. Pope Francis, 404. Remember, he came to the United States. CNN showed him that he arrived at 4:04 p.m. on his 923rd day as being Pope. Revelation has 404 verses. The King James Bible supposedly came out on May 2nd. So even up to right now, that was still 404 years ago. Princess Charlotte was born on 5/2. The 52nd prime is 239. We're in the 239th year of the United States until July 4th this year. Also, if you go from 5/2 to 7/4, it's a span of 2 months, 22 days. A lot like 22 that equals 165. Prince's protege that died, the Vanity or whatever, her real name is Denise Matthews, that also equals 165. And I talked about her a lot in my Prince video on how she is connected to the death of Prince, and she equals 165. Some other interesting ones, I've mentioned a lot about the duck bus crashes as well. Tour bus crash equals 165. I talked about how it's connected to the Mighty Ducks. Emilio Estevez equals 165. Tommy Boy's dad, Tommy Boy, equals 165. Willis Tower equals 165. The word 37 equals 165. The Willis Tower's in Chicago. Chicago equals 37. Willis Tower is even located at 233 South Wacker Drive, 233, the 51st prime. You also had Lamar Odom. His full name equals 165. Sylvia Brown, the psychic lady from Kansas City, I believe. War on Terror. Kenny McCormick in South Park, who always dies. Patrick Dempsey, I talked about him a lot with Grey's Anatomy. Even had Conor McGregor in the news recently, a whole bunch for announcing his retirement and whatnot. Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, which I'll mention, I'm going to make a whole nother video about the Simpsons episode where they killed off, Homer kills Neil Armstrong, George Clooney, and also Prince. So interesting, Neil Armstrong equals 165. Pearl Harbor, Hawaii equals 165. Also want to point out, in regards to the day before in 114, Holocaust equals 114. World War equals 114. And just Pearl Harbor, if you write out just Pearl Harbor, it equals 114. Also Denver Airport, the one with all of the pictures showing a lot of crazy stuff and whatnot, that equals 165. Some of these other ones, I don't even know what this one is from, but just wrote it in there. Denver Coliseum, New York Jets, Carolina Panthers win Super Bowl 50, which didn't happen, equals 165. Still interesting, because if you write out black quarterbacks, it equals 165. Black protester, 165. Warriors stop Spurs home game win streak, 165. So whatever, just a follow-up to this. Pretty crazy. I just don't know what the 165 is. I'm trying to piece together this puzzle that they gave me. I just want to know what it's all about. Especially considering they, coded me to it, or whatever's going on, 165 days after my birthday, and all the other 165s, that it's like, how in the world is that possible? How did I put the video out 165 days after the movie comes out? I have no idea, It's pretty strange stuff. So, whatever. I'm trying to shorten these videos up. I'm just going to make a separate Simpsons video, so have a good one. Peace.